All right, I want to bring two prophetic items to you today. One is what happened between the United States and Russia in Syria, but I'll talk about that a little later. Actually, that's the prophetic item I want to address. There's one that has been a prophetic item only in word, but not in reality. The world economic system seems to be the topic of defaults, and in the words of many, a bubble is about ready to burst, or whatever the case may be. And for some reason in the prophetic world, many believe that there is going to be some type of economic meltdown, financial meltdown in the United States. But as I've said, and in fact, it started last year in September and turned into a prophetic fiasco. And because it did not come to pass last year, they carried it on into 2016, slated for this September. I think there were a couple who thought that it was possible that a collapse could take place last April. But it didn't happen in April, and it did not happen in September of this year as well. And some who have tried to stretch this financial collapse out say, well, it's not just the United States, the whole world. Well, I've looked at some of the statistics and some of the financial reports regarding the world, and many do point to the bank in Germany, the Deutsche Bank, which is the largest lender in Germany and also has been the subject of financial bailouts to individual European countries such as Greece and others who are on the fence whether to leave the European Union or not. And they would have probably already left the European Union and abandoned the euro if, in fact, this bank would not have lent the money that they have lent to Greece. In fact, their stock has gone from $67 in 2010 to just recently, last week, it's now about $11. So this has been a bellwether that many have tried to point to say, well, not only is the European Union in trouble, but the world banking system is in trouble. And now the German government supposedly is stepping in and proposing, or at least offering somewhat of a bailout to this bank. This is what Stratford had to say on this particular situation. It says, in truth, these fears are probably overblown. For one thing, there are other steps Deutsche Bank can take before resorting to a government bailout. It could, for instance, go to the market and hope that the shareholders might be willing to pump more money into it. And they offer a few more timely advice to the bank, but that's really not important at this time. But certainly much of their woes did begin with the 2008 banking collapse that coincided with the United States housing crisis. But because of that collapse, and I'll read it to you what Stratford had to say, it says, in effect of that collapse, the European Union changed its banking rules to require that a bank's investors be bailed in by taking a hit on their investments before any government money can be used. Furthermore, global banks are now much better capitalized than they were before the crisis, making them considerably more resistant to the same type of contagion that led to the 2008 banking collapse. So banks actually worldwide are much better and stronger because of this crisis that took place in 2008. But let me go on. It says, but this is not to say that all is well in the banking sector. Deutsche Bank's woes are not unique, and many of its peers are experiencing similar problems. In the years since the financial crisis, banks around the world have been buffeted by strong headwinds. Not only did they discover that much of their balance sheets were worth far less than they thought, but they have subsequently had to operate under increased regulation and higher capital requirements. Though these new conditions make the industry safer, they also reduce profitability. And then there are the fines. In addition to Deutsche Bank, Bank of America has been slapped with a $16.6 billion penalty. Investors, meanwhile, are turning away from banks in search of clearer rewards, and the world's best and brightest are choosing technology firms over investment banks as they enter the workforce. The global banking sector is losing profits and influence. On top of these challenges, European and Japanese banks are facing additional discomforts. In the past 2 years, the central banks of Europe and then Japan plunged their interest rates into negative territory as they struggled to achieve their inflation targets. Research on the subject remains scant, but evidence suggests that such unconventional monetary policies further undermine banking profitability, a factor that appears to have influenced the Bank of Japan's latest adjustment to its quantitative and qualitative easing programs. In the Eurozone, German and Spanish banks have suffered the most from the European Central Bank's policy, since their hyper-competitive banking sectors have already reduced their margins. But even with that said, this is what their conclusion is. The conclusion is at the same time, it is unlikely that another global banking panic is nigh. Instead, a structural adjustment is underway, diminishing banks' profits and reducing their sway in modern developed economies. This transition will not be easy for banks or their governments, which will work to protect and support a sector that will always be deeply engaged with their citizens. And it should also be said that the United States government also released the latest information and said that for the first time in a long time, that salaries and household income is increasing, and actually took a big increase. So if you know anything about business, people or owners of companies simply don't pay more for their employees unless there's a need to, which means that there's more open competition for needed workers. But there's one thing I want to continue to hit home with, and that is there's nothing in Bible prophecy that says that there will be some type of economic collapse worldwide or even in the United States. That's listed in the pages of Scripture. That's simply not a prerequisite for the rapture of the church or the start of the tribulation period. But for some reason, there are many, not only in the world of Bible prophecy, but also survivalist preppers or whatever the case may be. They seem to think that a collapse is coming, even though financial data completely states otherwise. Of course, many of them keep referring to some type of bubble that's about ready to burst, but none of them really knows what the bubble is. And they've certainly not realized the way things happened back in 1929, which is really our only barometer for a big financial meltdown of which they're talking about. It simply didn't happen overnight. It didn't one day things were going good, then the bubble burst, and then all of a sudden it went sour. Even the Depression of 1929 took time. So if you're trying to connect this with some type of timing with the rapture or the beginning of the tribulation period, it's simply not biblical. And I know that upsets some people, but the bottom line is I'm here to tell truth. And that's why I get these specialized subscriptions, such as Stratford and the Economist and Foreign Policy Magazine, other things of that nature, so that the truth is told and not some conspiracy theory website that seems to, or show, that seems to be touting all kinds of destruction and financial collapse. And they've been doing that for years, but it simply never happened. And to give you an example, I knew back in 2008 that a financial collapse, should I say a housing collapse, was about to take place. And that did take place over time. And then when that did not pan out to the extent that they wanted it to, now don't get me wrong, it was a bad collapse, but when it didn't go as completely as far as they wanted it to, then they started talking about the derivatives market. And when the derivatives market didn't crash, then they started touting other things. So it's important to keep yourself level-headed. Now, there's really no benefit for me to report this, because most in the world of Bible prophecy, in some form or fashion, want the global economic market to crash because they think, for some reason in the back of their mind, they think that that has something to do with the rapture of the church or the beginning of tribulation period, but really it simply doesn't. But many seem to can't believe that it doesn't have something to do with it. Now I'll tell you this right here, the judgment of God on America and on other countries is coming soon enough. But it's probably more likely that's going to take place during the tribulation period and not before. And certainly there are a few books out there that have tried to tie the different traditions of Israel and the different Jewish feasts with some of the financial collapses that have taken place. But, if you go back far enough, they only take it so far. And then after that, it kind of gets sketchy, and it simply doesn't stay consistent any longer. So I don't necessarily hold much to what they've said. You can't simply tie the year of Jubilee, or whatever the case may be, or the different holidays or feast days to anyone other than the Jewish nation. And frankly, their account is not even that correct. And as you've seen in the past, their predictions have always fallen short or hasn't taken place at all. So I don't put much stock in anything that fails. If it fails, it's not of God. You can't just keep throwing dates out there and then revise them, and then revise them again, and then revise them again. And again, I'm just giving you good, solid advice so that you don't keep falling into these conspiracy theories that continue to take up a lot of room in the world of Bible prophecy, in which it shouldn't. It'd be good if we just stuck with the Bible and what it actually says about the church age, and stop trying to get this Jewish roots movement to be intertwined with the church today. There's simply no validity to that. Now going on to part 2. Now here's something that I believe is truly biblical. But before I say something about that, there's a headline that I think just shows where the world is today. It says, White House denies Jerusalem is in Israel. And what happened was the United States sent out a press communique to further explain what went on during the latest UN meeting. And they made the mistake of attaching Jerusalem to Israel. Well, they sent out a second note in which this time the same message indicated only Jerusalem and did not say anything about Israel. So what they were trying to do is to make sure that the world knew that they did not see Jerusalem being attached to Israel. So Jerusalem is still a trembling cup and an offense to the world, as stated in Zechariah 12:3. Now here's the article that I think is really prophetic, and it's brought by ABC News, and it's Russia warns against U.S. attack on Syrian forces. Now, as many of you know, the U.S. and Russia have come together and have tried to bring about a ceasefire in Syria. Now, of course, Russia went back on its word, and of course, the United States probably did too. But Russia now is working with Syria in Aleppo, and they have been bombing that city for quite some time in preparation of finally retaking the whole of the city. And this is what the article says. Russia warned the United States Saturday against carrying out any attacks on Syrian government forces, saying it would have repercussions across the Middle East as government forces captured a hill on the edge of the northern city of Aleppo under the cover of airstrikes. A Russian foreign ministry spokesperson said that a U.S. intervention against the Syrian army will lead to terrible tectonic consequences, not only on the territory of this country, but also in the region as a whole. She said regime change in Syria would create a vacuum that would be quickly filled by terrorists of all stripes. So right now, Russia and their counterparts, the Syrian government, also troops from Iraq and also Iran, Hezbollah, and Shiite fighters from around the world, are now gathering by the thousands for this last major push to retake the city. So I get two things from reading this article. One, the Psalm war scenario was created because no one could figure out how in the world the outer ring was going to be able to attack Israel. And when I say created, they created it. Well, we now know that's not necessary any longer because Syria is a gateway right into the northern mountains of Israel. And fighters from all over the world can enter through that region, which is what they're doing right now. And once they take Aleppo and get that under control, where do you think these mercenaries are going to go? Frankly, I don't foresee them ever leaving. And I see the day coming very soon in which their numbers are going to grow. And the bottom line is, if they can gather on the border of Aleppo and take that city from all over the world, there's no reason why they can't do the same thing when it comes down to the day in which the Gog and Magog War takes place. And a great army amasses with the help of Russia, as is happening right now with Syria, with this great army of different Shia and possibly Sunni. I mean, who knows? They've never been able to fight together before very successfully, but that very well may be the case when it comes to Israel. But whatever the case, there's going to come a time when the armies of Israel's enemies will gather on Israel's northern border, and they're going to stream down upon Israel from Syria. And they will be led by Russia, just as they're being led by Russia and Syria now. Now, certainly, I don't know when that's going to take place, but the bottom line is, this is already showing a very prophetic direction. You know, Russia a number of months ago said we're leaving Syria, and they never did. And frankly, I never expected them to leave. But I look for them to grow stronger in Syria, to build a much bigger army and military presence as time goes on. And I have to believe that Russia is there to stay. But what you really need to be looking at is this right here, is that Russia now is bullying the United States into not doing anything in the Middle East. And I really look for that to be the case when they finally do come down upon Israel. when the United States, when Britain and a few others start raising their heads and saying, whoa, what's going on here? I look for Russia to say, listen, stay out of it. It's none of your business. And as what's going on in Syria, I believe that's probably what they're going to do. They're probably going to tell Israel, listen, this is not our problem, and you get out of it the best way you can without our help. So I do not foresee the United States or Britain going to war for Israel. And when all seems to be lost, I do believe that God will step in, intervene, and this will become a supernatural event. And if you want to know the rest of the story, start reading in Ezekiel 38 on through the chapter. But you should see this Syrian war as being just simply a gateway to this future war. I mean, even though right now it looks like all it is just a Syrian war. Eventually, it's going to be a gathering spot for all of the Shia terrorist groups and mercenary fighters from Iraq, Iran, and other areas, Pakistan, India. And here's something you might want to think about. It may not be anymore when they start lining up to face off against Israel. It may be nothing more than when it talks about taking a spoil. It may be nothing more than to take back the Golan Heights. I've said, and many others have said, yeah, it's probably going to be because of Israel's oil, but it may not be for Israel's oil. Once they get done with this Syrian war, once they crush the rebels, it seems to me that they very well may set their sights on taking back the Golan Heights. And that very well may be the spoil that the Bible is talking about. And frankly, I don't think any country is coming to Israel's defense for the sake of protecting the Golan Heights, because really much of the world believes that the Golan Heights still belongs to Syria anyway. So that might be the spoil that they're talking about when this war does take place. Now, as to when this war will take place, I'm not going to address when it is, because it could be any time during the tribulation period, and there's reasons why I believe that. If you want to know more information on that, then look up one of my videos on the Gog and Magog War, Ezekiel 38 and 39. And if you do a search on either one of those topics, you'll probably find it. But I would say that it is likely that that's probably going to be the next major step that Syria does take, along with Russian help and other countries as well, since they're already in Syria fighting to take back Aleppo already. I don't foresee them leaving. That's probably going to be their next move, is to take back the Golan Heights. And I can see that as possibly being the spoil that is being spoke of in Ezekiel 38. And if you don't know the Lord, today is the day of salvation. Don't put it off. 150,000 people will die today. The Bible says that the vast majority will end up in a burning hell. Don't let that happen to you. Accept the Lord as your Savior today. It's not a difficult prayer. All you do is just say, Lord, come into my heart. Save me. I repent of my sins. I believe that you died on the cross. And because of that, my sins are pardoned. Thank you for dying for my sins. I accept you as my Savior. And today, from this day on, I live for you. And you Christians, if you haven't got a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide, there is a free version that's online that you can download. It's the same as the paperback book. And there's also 8 or 9 different languages that you can read this book. But if you want the paperback and you want to give it to a lost loved one, which is something I would suggest, or make your survival display with don't break glass in case of rapture, I'd definitely encourage you to get a paperback version and create this, but get one to your lost loved ones as soon as possible. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.